Hi guys, it's Kris Ruby here, founder of Ruby Media Group. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to be here for this Youngry Facebook Live Q&A with you. So I just want to give you a little bit about my background to start off with. I started my company about, almost 10 years ago now. And basically I started out just doing social media and personal branding, and then I expanded to doing public relations in addition to digital marketing and integrated communications. So, obviously the industry has evolved so much. It used to be enough to just do social, and now really everything is coming together and merging into one. So the purpose of today's Q&A is to really give you some insight into what it really takes to be an entrepreneur, what it takes to work in this industry, and what that means, what the lifestyle is really about, and to just answer all of your questions and give you as much feedback and information and knowledge as I possibly can to help you grow your business, especially if you are in a startup phase, to tell you exactly what you need to do to make that happen. So if you have any questions, please comment below. Oh, okay, great. So I see my first question here from Rahil. Okay, when is the best time to hire a PR firm in a company's growth phase? That's a really great question. Thank you so much for asking. So to answer that question, hi Stacy. Hi Christy, I see everyone's joining. To answer that question, it's a really good question. In terms of the best time to hire a firm, you really need to have all of your ducks in a row. First of all, you need to have a budget in place to be able to, afford retaining a PR firm. And most firms are typically going to be for a minimum of, 6-month engagements to a year. So it requires a lot on your part. I think the best time to hire a PR firm is really when you know exactly what your messaging is, what your brand identity is, and when you know exactly what you want to say to the world, so you have all of that intact. So that when you're hiring the PR person, you're saying, here's who I am, this is what my company is, ready, set, go, promote it, launch it into the world. If you are unclear about any one of those things that I discussed, I think that you really need to take a step back and work on the brand identity phase before going and doing any of those things. I would say, and I also wrote an interesting article about this in the Observer that actually went viral, which is that you need to understand, are you ready? Do you have the resources internally to even be doing this right now? Do you have the time? Working with a PR firm, what most people don't understand is it requires so much energy and so much of your time, whether you're responding to queries, writing new bios, writing new, fact sheets, or actually, answering a reporter on deadline. You need to actually have the time personally to work with the person that you've hired. So I'd also say you really need to make sure that you have that in a row as well. Okay, so I have thank you for having me. I see Youngry said something. Thank you for having me. So Stacy said, what is the best way to get ROI from social media marketing right now? I think this is an awesome question. And the best way, here's my secret for you. The best way is through content marketing if you're looking for ROI. I think it's the most cost-effective way to engage in any of this. And honestly, I think it's the best way to show your thought leadership in this space right now. So, if you, for example, it could take you, let's say it's a few $100s or a few $1,000s, you can actually see where that money is going when you're doing content marketing very quickly. So, sorry, I hope you can't hear the squeaking in the background. If you can, let me know. Comment below if you can hear the squeaking, just so I know. Okay, hold on, guys. All right. Okay, I'm back. Content marketing. Okay. All right. Content marketing is very important here, really because you need to have a strategy with it, but it enables you to put yourself out there. You can do it through blogging, through guest blogging. You can be publishing the content on your LinkedIn. You can basically be doing anything with it. And plus, okay, goes to squeaky. Oh man, okay. Let me walk and talk with you. Plus, you're just going to get the best ROI from it right now. Okay. Sorry guys, I have Keikos in my arm. You're going to get the best ROI from it right now, and I think that's what you're looking for. If you're an entrepreneur in a growth startup phase, then you should be spending as much as your possible time as you can, as free time, writing, Every single night, if you have free time, you should be writing. You should be looking at what other people are saying and writing. I can't stress that enough. If you're not doing that, I think you're making a mistake. All right, I see some more questions here. Okay, what is your number one tip for content marketing? From Lauren, that's a great question. So my number one tip for content marketing is I think that it has to be integrated with SEO. So you need to understand, first of all, what do you even want to rank for? You know, who are you? What's your brand identity? And what are you trying to get people to understand about you? You can't really do content marketing effectively if you haven't actually done that work on the front end to understand those keywords and what this space looks like. Content marketing, you need to understand your buyer persona. You need to understand what do people want to know who are searching for you. So if you haven't actually done that work, I don't believe your content marketing efforts will be effective. So my number one tip for you with content marketing is to really thoroughly do your research before you start doing it. My next tip for content marketing is that you need to really write things like a journalist. There's a difference between the way traditional journalism was when you're writing for print versus writing for the web. If you're writing an essay, no one wants to read it. You know, you need to write punchy web copy. You need to write things that people will actually want to share. If you feel like you're publishing something and no one's sharing it, that's a problem. My next tip for content marketing is that you can really understand analytics with it. If you're writing and writing and writing and not looking at analytics, that's a big problem. You need to know what content converts and what content is actually bringing people over to your site or to learn more about you. And my final tip for content marketing is that you need to understand what are the goals. Why are you doing this? Is the goal for content marketing for you to really just educate people as a thought leader in your space? Or is the goal for content marketing to get people over to your site and that's why you're doing it? Because if you have two very different objectives, obviously the end goal and piece of content is going to look very different. Okay, hold on. So many questions here. This is great. Okay, next one from Christy. How do you develop someone's personal brand? That is an awesome question. So we spend a lot of time doing personal branding, specifically with a lot of people in the medical space right now. And in order to develop someone's personal brand, you need to understand who are you, what is the message I'm trying to say, and who do I want it to reach. Fundamentally, if you can't answer those questions, then you need to take a step back. So in order to develop someone's brand, the first thing is to take a 360 view on all of this. And that's, so much of what we do is the strategic management consulting, and we combine it with personal branding, with social media, with PR. Why do we do that? Because I don't think you can do any of these things in a silo. You can't just have PR be completely disjointed from branding efforts or marketing efforts or sales efforts. I don't believe anything is going to be truly impactful or effective if we're still operating like most companies were, 6 years ago, where there's all these different departments, no one's speaking to each other, and you're doing entirely different things. So the first step to developing a personal brand is really figuring out, who am I in this world? Do you really know who you are? What are you trying to tell people about that? What is that message? If you could have one line, if there's one thing that you wish people could understand, what would it be? What is that line? What are you an expert at? What is that line of, what's your value proposition? How are you differentiating yourself? You can start out by doing a competitive analysis, looking at others in the space, seeing what they've done, seeing what you like, seeing what you don't like and what you change. But fundamentally, when we're talking about your personal brand, there should be a value prop that's so strong that there's nothing neutral about it, that it is very inherently a positive force in one, or negative actually, in one specific way, where people, when they start seeing content, when they start seeing different branding elements, they know that it's you and it's associated with that. So, all right, we have another question here. You posted on your Instagram a quote that says, "Turn every no into a yes." Can you elaborate on that? From Vanessa. That's an awesome question. And actually, I love that question because that quote is very important to me. So turn every no into a yes. I think this has to do a lot with the public relations work that we do. There's so much rejection inherently in this field, whether it's social media or PR or sales or marketing. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, I would say you better get used to that, because you're going to be rejected every day. And I would say, particularly in the PR field, 100 times a day. It goes along with it. So every time you're pitching something, If you get a no or if you get a non-response, you don't stop there. You have to keep going. How can you turn that no into a yes? How can you use the feedback that you are being given? And if you're not being given it, you have to ask for it. That's your job as a PR person. Why don't they want to run this? Why doesn't this pitch work? What are they looking for? What type of expert did they want for this opportunity? Once you have those answers, you can adequately pitch appropriately for the next opportunity. But if you're not clear on that, that's an inherent issue. So every time you get a no, you need to turn it into a yes. And I would say the same thing for entrepreneurs here who are interested, with investing and everything else you're going to be doing. You're going to be hearing a lot of no's across the board when you're starting out. It's your job to take all of that information and really formulate it into something better. Saying no is not the failure here. The failure that you can make is not understanding why you got a no and not doing anything about it. Okay, next question here from Ash. Hey Ash, thank you so much for having me on today. This is great. I love what you've built. And by the way, I would like to say I love the name Youngry, Young and Hungry. I think that's what it stands for, but I think it's awesome. And I love seeing other entrepreneurs building out stuff like this. So you seem to like LinkedIn. How do you best use this versus other content? That's a great question. So I think you need to understand, if let's say there are 3 different parties, right? Like LinkedIn is one. What you'd say there is very different than what you're going to say on Instagram. What you say on Instagram is very different than what you're going to say on Twitter. So I think understanding how you use each platform is important. So for example, if you're primarily B2B, I would say LinkedIn is probably going to make a lot of sense for you. How I use LinkedIn versus other platforms is mainly for their publishing platform. I think that it's great for microblogging, and you can really get content up quickly, especially people who aren't, versed in WordPress or who don't want to be doing their own sort of blog. You can take whatever content you're doing and put it on LinkedIn. I'd also say a tip for LinkedIn is that you want to use it to cross-promote your content. So, if you write a great blog post, or if you're contributing to an outlet as, a guest author, take that content and put it on your LinkedIn as well, because there are certain people that are going to see your content on LinkedIn that are never going to go to all these other places. So that's something I want to say. That's a big mistake entrepreneurs make. They think that anytime they're doing something, people are watching it. They're going to see it. As Gary Vaynerchuk says a lot about, this is an attention game. This is all about trading attention. Where are people's attention right now, and how can you get that? You need to be in as many different places as possible, as many different touch points as possible for people to help them find you. Make it easier for that process to happen. Oh, this is a great quote or a great question here. Is boosting posts worth it? I think it's very controversial. It really depends. My answer here about boosting posts is that I think what makes more sense is running a targeted Facebook ad campaign right now. There's a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs and small business owners to leverage that. I think, again, as Gary Vee says, it's completely grossly underpriced right now, and that's going to change very quickly. Just like, the same thing with even doing Facebook Lives or any of these other opportunities. The more oversaturated the market becomes, then you're going to start to see a change in pricing or in premium features being added that weren't once there previously. I think boosting posts are good if you're really trying to get shares up or likes up for that piece of content. However, do I see a direct translation? Not as much, because I think there's a real art to doing Facebook ad campaigns correctly. There are whole experts. There's an entire industry just for people that specialize in Facebook ad campaigns. This stuff is changing all the time. So I don't believe that you really are able to differentiate or hyper-target as much with boosting a post as you can with doing a thorough Facebook ad comprehensive campaign. So, I just see Ash's comment. Thanks for the awesome. Okay. I like that comment. How do you determine the type of content you share? This is a great question. How do you determine the type of content you want to share on social media? That's really important. And the only way that you can determine it, again, is to go back to that blueprint I'm talking about, which is having a strategy in place. The number one mistake people make when they hire someone like myself is that they don't have a strategy. And there's nothing I can do, really, without you having a strategy when you come to me. If there's no strategy, I don't know where I'm aiming. And that's the problem with social media. People are just like, oh, I'm on social media, I'm doing this. But are you really, what are you really doing? Are you posting for the sake of posting? Are you posting pretty pictures? What are you really doing? Are you actually even spending your resources effectively? Do you know where this stuff is going? Are you boosting posts for the sake of boosting because you think it's what you should do and it's the easiest option? Or do you really have, a funnel campaign set up that links back somewhere where you have actual landing pages created, where you've actually done the research to understand what hashtags you're using, where you've actually done lifestyle photography and have that done correctly, where you actually know where you're targeting when you're doing PR? Have you done that work? This is not a game for just anyone to jump into and think that they can do it because the technology is so easy. And so I think if you take the time to educate yourself on all of this stuff, yes, you can. But to just say it's there and I'm going to click enter or send is a mistake. And I fundamentally disagree with that. Pressing post or share or enter is not a strategy. In fact, I have no idea what it is. And most of the time, I have to come in and clean up those mistakes. And so I'd also say to other PR people and social media people, if you're doing that just to get the business, it's a mistake, and you shouldn't be. If you don't fundamentally understand what are the growth drivers behind a business, why are you doing this? Where does this business want to be in 5 to 10 years? What is the end state of what you're actually creating for someone? You are creating more damage than anything good for that business because someone else is going to have to fix it. So I really, really urge you to understand the why, to understand, and I wrote a quote about this, the difference between the what versus the why. People get so caught up in here's what I'm doing. Here are the tactics of what I'm doing. I don't care about that. What I care about is the why. Why are you doing it? How does what you're doing right now, why does it matter? Don't tell me what it is. Tell me why it matters and how it drives to everything else that you want to do in your business. Okay, next question here. Referencing your article and reasons why you shouldn't hire a publicist. I love this article. This did phenomenally well, and I want to tell the reason why is because I just spoke the truth. I really honestly shared what I thought. When is the right time during a company's growth phase to hire a PR firm? The right time is when you're ready and when you can put in the time to work with the person you've hired. If you think you're going to hire someone and they are going to be a magician for you and get you lots of press and stuff without you answering them, you are sadly mistaken. So you need to really be able to have the time. I mean, the clients that I work with, PR is like boot camp. I mean, it massively disrupts their life. I'll be honest with you, it does. Because they have to, they have to answer me all the time with a lot of different things in order for me to be impactful. If there's a query, I need their actual input and their feedback or their bullets for what that query is going to be. If I get them a TV hit, they have to drop everything they're doing and close up shop for a few hours to be able to do that. If you are not prepared to do that, then PR is not right for you right now. Or certain types of PR may not be right for you. For example, I have clients that don't want to do TV segments at all, and they don't want to do, other sorts of radio, for example. However, they want to do content marketing, and they're great at it. So you need to understand what makes most sense for you, what's the right fit for you. Okay, so we have some more questions here. What are some marketing secrets to building an this is a great question. Impressive Instagram self-branding purposes for a company too. I think Instagram really works in terms of personal branding if you are showing people a behind the scenes into your life, and also if you're giving good content. One of the biggest sort of growth hacks for Instagram right now is actually, try writing a paragraph, just a descriptor paragraph with what you're posting, instead of just doing a few hashtags, which, aren't that engaging and should be hidden within the comment section. Try really, using it as a microblogging platform. It's not typically being used that way. And I think, the pieces of content that I've seen, that even for ourselves, the highest conversion rate is when I actually sit there and I write out content that is just for Instagram. So for example, if we're looking at the Ruby Media Group handle right now on Instagram, there's a few quotes that I've done recently where I have sat down and spent a solid amount of time just writing descriptor paragraphs with that piece of content that only went up on Instagram and didn't necessarily go up in other platforms the same way. Because I understood who my audience was on Instagram and what I wanted to give to them. That's the other thing. when you're approaching what you can do on these networks, the people that crush it are people that are building communities. It's not about them. It's about what they're giving people. It's about, here's the information and knowledge I want to share. So when you approach it that way, I think it can be very powerful, and you're going to attract people. Now listen, the people you attract by doing that may not be your end user or your target customer. However, they can be part of your community for a very different reason, and that's important to understand. I also think something that's inherently flawed with most Instagram strategies today is the way in which people use hashtagging. So most people use hashtagging like even the way we use it, hashtagging PR, hashtag public relations firm, all of these different things, or hashtag social media, or hashtag influencer marketing. The people that I want to find or want to target, so let's say I want to work with a doctor, right? Like they're not searching for hashtag social media unless they're a very advanced Instagram user. And that may sound like this crazy notion right now, but you have to understand the majority of people in certain demos aren't using these tools the way that you may be using them with your peers or other millennials in that group. So you really have to understand that. So if I want doctors and I'm doing hashtag social media, well, that's a problem, because what I'm getting is a lot of other people in my industry and not people who are actually my target audience. So I urge you to really consider that when you're doing your Instagram strategy for your business or for your personal brand. Next question. Oh, a comment. I love that. The what versus the why is essential. Yes, I agree. And the people that work with me, I constantly stress this to them. I want everyone to really think like a consultant. I want everyone, by the way. I think if you work at a company, even if you don't have your own, company or you're not an entrepreneur, I think that if you start to think like an entrepreneur, you have a tremendous value prop in the market today, because I think the world is becoming more entrepreneurial in general, as evidenced by what Ash is creating, with Youngry and everything else, and lots of things that are popping up like this. You need to think the way that your boss, mentor, colleagues, you need to be able to think that way. And most importantly, if you want to be a good marketer, if you can't understand how your target audience is thinking, that's a problem. Hi, Ruby. Hello, Lorenzo. How can your local publicity help get you national publicity? Great question. So the first step here is that you have to have local publicity before you can ever build a national publicity. The reason it helps is because it establishes a base. As a journalist or a producer, they want to see what you look like on camera on someone else's local station before they're ever going to put you on national. If you're going to make a mistake, it's not going to be on their airtime. So get as much local practice as you can before you ever do anything else. The other thing is that I think it builds up your credibility as an expert. I think you should be taking everything you possibly can take when you're just starting out and trying to establish yourself as an expert or let people know about really who you are in your industry. I think from there it has a snowball effect, but I would say it requires a lot of patience. So the number one question I always get asked is about my career. How did I get started doing Fox or CNBC or Closing Bell or HLN or any of these things I've done? So here's my answer. I got started because I wrote something. I wrote an article. It was for JDate at the time. And it was how social media is changing the world of online dating. And there was a producer named Matt Scott, and he found my article on Twitter. So I got started in television actually because of content marketing. That's what I mean in terms of the strategy, how it all links together. He found my JDate article, how social media is impacting the world of dating, and he loved it because it was written actually in a format that would play well on television, and the content was strong. So he booked me. He booked me on WTNH, ABC, Good Morning Connecticut in New Haven near Yale. And that was how I got started on television. And I think I woke up at 4:30 a.m. and I was driving 2 hours, and it was these 7 a.m. hits. And I did that for probably 3.5 years. I mean, I really did so many segments like that. And then I eventually was hooked up with someone else and met them. And then I did my first hit on Fox Business, and then on Fox News, and then did Fox and Friends Weekend, and lots of all of these other great things. However, when people see that, they say, oh, can you get me on these stations? Well, no, I can't. What have you done? Have you put in the hours? Have you put in the time for 4 years to actually do what I did to get there? Because I didn't just start out there. So maybe you're lucky. Maybe you are that person that can miraculously start out there because you're that good. However, the majority of people that I know who are commentators on television, they've put in the time, and it's happened over years. You know, this notion of an overnight success is such a fallacy. And I really believe that as an entrepreneur, you have a duty and obligation to tell people how you really got there, how you really did it. You know, what mistakes did you really make so other people can learn from that? And I like to share that with people. I think it's really important. Next question, tips for increasing follower counts. This is a great question. I want to be clear. Because I get this all the time with clients who think that follower count matters. Follower count and likes does not matter. It matters to a booker or a producer, perhaps, if they want to see that you have a follower count behind you or that you have social clout, right? However, I'd rather that you have 150 engaged followers than 5,000 fake followers, right? So that's a big mistake people are making in general, where they have all these followers, but they're not really that engaged. If you have 150 people that are really core fans of what you're doing with your business, that exponentially counts way more. But to answer the question at hand here, some tips here for, increasing follower counts. I think hashtagging appropriately, putting out great content that people are going to engage with, doing the research that we're talking about, doing the time to actually come up with a strategy. I think all of those things will help. Also, people are way too into themselves. I mean, I think if you actually just stop to engage with people's content and left a comment or double tap for a like, please do the same thing here. You know, like this, share it if you think this content's valuable so we can help other people with it, because that's the goal of this Lunch and Learn and why we're doing this today. But I think if people actually became more human on social, they'd increase their follower count. For the young in spirit, hungry in ambition, what's your best advice? Young in spirit, hungry in ambition. I'd say stop worrying about being perfect and do it. I think if you are a perfectionist, on the one hand, it's a great thing. On the other hand, it can pose as a disadvantage because you have paralysis through analysis, as we like to say, where you are just not able to move because you are so worried about doing something right. Just do it. Just try. Have a strategy. Don't just go out and do anything. Have a strategy first and foremost. But you got to get out there. You know, you can't just be pontificating about the meaning of a Facebook ad. Do it. Try one. Spend a few dollars. You know, don't spend $5,000 on your first ad. Spend a little bit of time, but just do it. Please, get out there and do it. I would say, you know, and I wrote this other thing, this great article, I thought it was about, girl bosses and what that really means on Instagram and everything else. And this, again, another fallacy because of social media. What does it really mean to be a girl boss? You know, who really has the time to be hair and makeup ready in the middle of the day or sit there with their cute girl boss mug and take these beautiful selfies midday when you need to be working? You know, you need to prioritize. And again, you need to be somewhat accurate, portray what it's really like to be you. I've had so many people work with me over the years, and I've seen what they've done. The people that have been most successful are the ones that get out and do it. For example, I had one team member, this girl named Jen Tai, and I'm amazed at what she's done. I mean, she's created her own blog. She's a real blogger now. She has a real following. When she started with me, I don't even think she had that blog yet. And I remember pushing her and saying, do it, blog, get out there, just do it. And that girl did. I mean, she's been a tremendous success. And now she's gone on to do social media, I think, for QVC and all of these top brands, in addition to having basically her own business with this blog. So that's the other thing. Think about yourself as an entrepreneur and think about what value you have, because there's this notion of having inherent brand equity in everything that you do. The days of staying with a company for 5-10 years are long gone. You always need to understand who are you and what are you bringing to the marketplace. How many ways to keep in touch? How many ways to be ignored? Oh my God, yes, that was the title of my J-Date article. How many ways to keep in, yes, you know what? Online dating poses inherent issues. There are so many ways to be ignored or ghosted on social. You know what? Ash, our next Facebook Live can be inherently just about that, because I could go off in 2 hours about that one, especially after this weekend. So that's a whole other topic. Tradecraft. Do you have any mindful wellness habits? That's a really good question. So on Saturdays, I go to the gym, and I will sit there for, a few hours, and what I'll do is I'll listen to my podcast. So I listen to the Gary Vee one, and I listen to fellow entrepreneur Eric Sue. He has a great one, Marketing School with Neil Patel. And I'm listening to an old one right now by David Meister. I love his stuff. So yeah, I think like getting back in the game, listening to this stuff over and over again, which brings me to something else I want to talk about. The title, Young and Hungry. What does that really mean? I think the number one mistake that people can make, and that people don't talk about actually, is losing that hunger and losing that drive and losing that ambition. So for example, I started my company when I was 21. I just graduated from Boston University's College of Communications. I majored in public relations. I had 13 internships by the time I graduated at all different companies, but I never worked for any other company. So everything that I know is self-taught, like that thirst and that hunger and that drive for knowledge. The reason I share this with you is because here we are, I'm now 30, a few years later, 9, 10 years later, you can start to feel like a dinosaur if you start your company at 21 years old and you're now 30. It's this feeling that I have is typically a feeling people have who started their companies much later in life. And so I also want to shed some light on this, which I've never actually publicly talked about or shared anywhere, but it's really important for me to share this with you guys today, because if you are crushing it at 21 years old and then you're 30 and all the millennials are on Snapchat and you're still like talking about LinkedIn or this other stuff, having that feeling is okay. What you do about it matters more. If you want to sit in that feeling and not take action and not be able to move past that, it's going to cripple you. It will destroy you. You need to be able to move past it. You need to be able to understand, you know what? Things are not the same way as they were when I started my company 9 years ago. And that's okay. But what I do with that feeling matters more than how I feel about it. And the biggest mistake people make is that they can't get past it. There are people that are 60 years old that feel this way in general about the entire social media industry. But they get past it. They don't just sit in it. And so the reason I bring this up is because there's not, people that started their company at my age at 21 also feel this way. And they're embarrassed and ashamed to talk about it because it's this thing that no one talks about, because they still want to be like the 21-year-old that started their company. So what I urge you to do is get back out there and get back into it. Stay young, stay hungry. You don't need to be 21 years old to be hungry. You can be 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 and still have that passion. But you know what? It's not going to stay there on its own. Being young and hungry is my form of mindfulness or wellness. That is my daily practice. How can I stay in that? If you want to meditate on something, meditate on that. Stay in that space or that headspace where you focus on, you know what? If someone were to, as Gary Vee said, if someone were to take me out of business today, what would they do? If someone else were to pitch business here, what does that look like? If they were going to steal every client I have, what would they be doing? Get in that mind space. That to me is mindfulness and wellness. I figure out all the time, if someone is looking to take me out of the business, what are they doing here? And then I think, you know what? This is what they're going to do, and I need to up my game. So you constantly have to be figuring out, how can you up your game? Not only for your clients, but also for yourself, for what you are bringing. And this leads me to my next point. If you are not reading every day, stop right now. You cannot be doing this business, or virtually any business, if you are not invested in reading and learning. The number one way to take yourself out of business is to stop reading and to stop learning. You have to be in it. You have to be in the game. So many entrepreneurs, again, this goes back to the mistake of being in the tactics and not the higher level 360 vision here. The only way that you bring real value to clients is that you're reading and learning and looking at case studies and seeing what other people are doing. By doing that, you get ideas. As a consultant, what I am worth is my knowledge and my ideas. If I am not constantly reading and understanding what other people are doing and what is changing about each of these industries, that's a big problem. Please, if you take anything away from today, take that. Keep reading. Keep striving. You need to be understanding what's going on in the world. Okay, we have some other questions here. How many ways to keep in touch? How many ways to be ignored? All right. I see some people are joining. That's great. Thank you for the amazing knowledge. How can people find out about me? So you can find out about me on rubymediagroup.com, krisruby.com. You can stay connected with me on Instagram, Twitter. So Twitter, I'm Sparkling Ruby and at Ruby Media Group. And on some of these other networks, I think at Kris Ruby. There you go. So I'm all over the place. You can find me, like our pages, follow us, and ask me questions, DM me. I'm happy to answer anything you have. What are 3 books you recommend? That's a really good book. That's a great question. So one book that's really great is The Trusted Advisor. That is very, very important. That's by David Meister. It's really about the art of consulting. There's another one about the mind of someone at McKinsey and how they think. Again, a lot of my recommendations are going to be more so about strategic planning and based around that. I wouldn't necessarily say it's only books. I would say it's also, like using Flipboard and customizing a feed, doing Apple News, getting Google alerts on things that are important to you. Also, searching for hashtags. So I'll search for the hashtag management consulting, strategic planning. Like I want to see, what inspires me and who else is writing in that space. And based on that, that's how I figure out who I'm going to follow. There's a lot of other books, and I'll drop a line here of what some of the other ones are. There's another one about people, understanding people. Let's talk about that one. That's a huge mistake I made. I started out at 21 years old. Let's be honest. I had no real management experience other than managing myself and how I was managed at internships. So I had no idea how to manage people when I started out. I made tons of mistakes. And I've learned from them. Believe me, I have. Like I now understand that management matters. These things that I thought were just theoretical in a textbook when I was in college, I actually learned that they really matter. How people feel that work for you and with you matter. And you need to take time to understand that and not be like a bull in a china shop and just completely drive through that and not care. Again, in the spirit of honesty here, I'm sharing that with you because there's young entrepreneurs watching this who are probably in the same spot that I was in, who are going to be 21 or 30 or whatever and starting a company. And these things matter. You think it doesn't matter, but it really matters because every time that you lose someone or have overturn in your company and have to take the time training someone again, you are less profitable. You're not helping yourself. So please take the time to understand a little bit more about the people that work with you, what matters to them, what's important to them, their family life, their structure, and try and be nice. Because, believe it or not, it matters. What else, guys? What other questions do I have here? You don't even know. Let me, Did I just do something? Oh, no. Wait. Are you there? Wait, I don't even know if I just paused this or not. So if you can see this, please leave a comment or a like or a question right now so I can see that I'm doing this right. Oh, no, I think I went over time. I think that's why. Okay, guys, so I have time for one last question because I think I went 10 minutes over. Final question. Does anyone have anything else that they want to ask me before? Oh, I see some likes. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know I'm alive by the likes there. Last question here. Any last tips for early stage entrepreneurs? My final tip here for early stage entrepreneurs is, again, to really create a strategy, to create a deck that's going to be the blueprint of everything that you do, of every decision that you make. That's really important because that deck is going to be everything for you. That's going to be what you refer back to for basically every decision that you make. And I see one other question here from Rodney in California. Hi, Rodney. Thanks for joining us. Actually, speaking of mindfulness, someone else asked me that question in wellness. My other mindfulness and wellness thing is that I got an infrared sauna from Rodney, actually, and I sit in it. It's in my living room, and I sit in it every night, and I go on my laptop, and I do work from it, and it's really good for detoxing my cells, and it calms me down, and I don't have to go anywhere to get there because it's in my living room. So infrared sauna technology is important. Rodney asked, how much do you think you should know someone before you hire them? You know what, I got to tell you, all the people I work with, even some of the interns I have, it's like they're in Kansas or Alabama. I don't even, they're all over the country. It's a feeling. For me, before I hire someone, it's a feeling. Like I either have it or I don't. And if I don't have it, I'm not hiring them. But if I have it, then they're my road dog. They're going to be part of my team. But if I don't have it, if I don't have that connection, then no. You know, I think in terms of how much you should know about someone, you need to understand what their motivations are. You need to understand what's important to them. You know, is this going to be someone that's a team player? Is this someone that really is going to fit within your structure? Or is this someone entrepreneurial that inherently is going to want to do their own thing? That's not a bad thing, but you need to understand that. You need to understand someone's personality type and what's going to work for you and your business and what will be best for you. In terms of how much you should know about them before you hire them, the great thing about social media and the internet is so much of it's available to you today, unless you're doing, you know, like, I guess, a criminal background check through like Been Verified or any of these other sites, but those are not top of mind. What's top of mind for me when I'm interviewing someone is how quickly are they responding? How is their writing? Can they put a sentence together? How is their thinking? If I give them a problem, can they solve it, or are they coming back to me with another question? These are things that I inherently look for when hiring someone. That is more important than anything else. The best relationships I have are virtual. They're with people who I speak with on Facebook Messenger, on DM, on Instagram. You know, it doesn't matter where they are. It matters what the relationship is. So I think I'm out of time, and I went way over. I think I went 15 minutes over. I apologize, Young Gree fans here, but thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome. I really enjoyed talking with you guys. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this. And if you have any other questions for me, please do not hesitate to reach out. Send me a DM. You can shoot me an email, kruby@rubymediagroup.com. And you know what? I'm so grateful, Ash and the Young Gree team, for giving me this opportunity today to speak about some things that I've never publicly spoken about. But thank you for letting me talk about it. And hopefully, you know, some of the stuff I said helps someone. So have a great day, everyone. And thanks for joining me. You're the best too, you guys. Thank you.